We continue in Luke. The tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." And he told them this parable. "So which of you, having 100 sheep and losing one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one that is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders and rejoices. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance. Or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost.' Just so I tell you, there is more joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." I have lost a phone, which is why we have a landline, so we can call the phone to find it. I have lost keys, homework, money, innocence, faith, memory, tools, direction, youth, friends, job. I have lost ground, lost my heart, my perspective, my teeth, my temper, and my touch. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see, are words that we sing as a plea. Can we be found? Can we see again? Our reality is that we are never going to have it all together. Our lostness is not over. Quoting my favorite blogger, Debbie Thomas, "Lostness remains a central feature of my relationship with God. And if this week's gospel reading has anything to say about it, this is exactly as it should be." Luke sets the scene quickly. Jesus is in trouble again for hanging out with the wrong people. Those persons that were kind of pushed out of the church of his time. The people that were on the edges of society. "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them. How rude of him." And in response, Jesus tells the scandalized snobs 2 parables. In the first, a shepherd leaves his flock to 99 to look for a single lamb that is lost. Let me tell you, if you do not know, that being a shepherd was about the lowest prestige job that anyone could have in Jesus' time. Shepherds were people that nobody wanted to be around. I can't imagine before the days when bathing and soap were common that You'd want to be around a lot of people, but you sure didn't want to be around a shepherd. And this shepherd is crazy because he has a flock of 100. One's lost. He leaves the 99 in the wilderness to go look for one. What kind of economy is that? He's going to come back and maybe all the 99 are gone or eaten by wolves or whatever. But parables are stories to invite us to think about a point, not get lost in the details. And the shepherd goes and finds the lamb that's lost and carries the lamb home on his shoulders and invites his friends and neighbors over and throws a party to celebrate. I wonder what they ate. In the second, a woman loses one of her 10 silver coins. Well, you've got coins and sofas at home, don't you? You don't look for those too often. But 10 silver coins, that may have been really important. You know, a collection is important when we have all of the possibilities. Remember when the 50 state quarters came out and you could buy these folders, and as the new quarters came out, you put them in the folders and you have all of them. Does anybody have a Woody, Jesse, Bullseye, and Stinky Pete collection from Toy Story? You might collect stamps or tools or pictures of things or some ceramic figures or whatever. But there's a desire to have, for some people, all of them. So it's so important we lost one coin in the house that's going to show up. But another way of looking at it, the possibility is that the 10 coins might have represented a dowry. Now that's an old-fashioned word. But in a patriarchal time, women didn't have much worth. So that to be married off, the family had to assemble a dowry to give to the family marrying. And that, 9 silver coins was not going to cut it. 10 silver coins was the minimum. Maybe there was a wedding coming up in the family. I don't know. But anyway, so she's lost a coin. She lights a lamp because there's only a door in the house, no windows, and sweeps the entire house looking carefully. And then, like the shepherd, when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors and asks them to celebrate the recovery of the coin, which we know they at least didn't eat that. Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that was lost. I have probably misread these words for a long time. I thought that the lost lamb and the lost coin represented the sinners out there beyond the fold, beyond the home country, beyond Christianity, beyond the purview of God, the church, and me. But look who Jesus is telling this story to. The lost lamb had already belonged to the shepherd's flock. The lost coin already belonged to the woman before she loses it. It's her own coin. It's his own sheep. In other words, the parables are not about lost outsiders finding salvation and becoming Christians. These parables are about us, the insiders, the churchgoers, the communion takers, the Bible study group, the Sunday school class members. These parables are about lostness on the inside. What does this mean? It means that lostness is an experience exclusive to non or not yet Christians. Because lostness happens to God's people. It happens within community. It's not that we cross over once and for all. Something happens in our lives where we become members, and all the sinful lostness has been put aside to a righteous foundness. We get lost over and over again. And God finds us over and over again. Lostness is not an anomaly, it's just part of the parcel of the life of faith. What does it mean to be lost? It means we lose our sense of belonging. We lose our capacity to trust. We lose our felt experience of God's presence. We lose our will to persevere. Some get lost when illness descends on their life. And God's, the searcher, the seeker, determined, can't find us for a while. And goodness starts to look not so good. Some people get lost at the hands of an abuser. Some get lost when death comes too soon and too suddenly for someone we love. And we have a crisis of faith that leaves us reeling. Some get lost when our marriages die. Some of us get lost when someone breaks our hearts. Some of us get lost in the throes of addiction, or anxiety, or lust, or unforgiveness, or hatred, or bitterness. Some get lost very close to home, within the very walls of the church. We get lost when prayer seems meaningless, when the scriptures we once loved are no longer interesting, when the table of bread and wine that was once nourished us now leaves us hungry or cranky or bored. Like the hymn, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. We get lost so miserably that the shepherd has to wander through the rugged wilderness to find us. So lost, the housewife has to light her lamp and pick up her broom and sweep every nook and cranny of the house to find what's become of us. This lostness isn't trivial. And the searching is real. The shepherd just isn't pretending to look for the lost sheep, and the woman isn't putting on an act with her lamp and broom. What's lost is really lost, even though the seeker is God. Can we pause for a minute and just think about how astonishing this is? That God contends with genuine stakes when it comes to lostness? That God seems not to care that we were once firmly in the fold, the family, the congregation, we decided to leave. That's not important. It's that we're lost. In this quick little parable, God searches, God persists, God lingers, God plods, and when at last God finds what God is looking for, God cannot contain the joy and invites the whole neighborhood over. Happy news of recovery, throws a party. One of my favorite stories is about a little boy named Davy. He was 8 years old and it was his first summer to play baseball. It was a small town. There was one team for 8-year-olds. And Davy went to church with the man that was going to be his coach. He, all his life, as he remembered, called him Mr. Jerry. But now, he called him Coach, even though the season was long away. And when Davy saw Coach, he always had something to tell him. Coach, I got a new glove. Coach, do you know we start practice in 3 weeks? Coach, will we have new baseballs? Hey, Coach, we start practice next week. I'll be there. Coach, see you next Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday came, and it started out as a nice day. But about noon, a front moved in, and it started to rain. Hard. Buckets. Cats and dogs. And it kept raining. It was no day to play baseball. Rained all afternoon. And it just started to let up when Mr. Jerry, who had worked a little late that day because there was no point taking off early for baseball practice, happened to drive by the ball field on the way home to look and see how things looked. There was several inches of water on the field, and there in the dugout was a small figure. What in the world, he said. He got out of his truck and walked to the dugout, and there was Davy. Coach, I told you I'd be here. This is not how I generally picture God. Maybe the most scandalous aspect of these lost and found parables is that I still get lost. And the scandalous part is they reveal the true nature of God. God the searcher, the seeker, the determined, the dog finder. If these parables are true, then God doesn't hang out where we might think. For God is where the lost things are. God is where lostness reigns. God is in the darkness of the wilderness, in the remote corner of the house. God is where the search is at its fiercest. Maybe if we want to find the lost, that's where we're going to find God. And if we want to find God, we need to seek the lost. I've got to leave the safety of the inside and venture out. I have to recognize my own lostness and consent to be found. Well, that's not easy by a long shot. In the first place, I have to believe I am worthy looking for. I have to believe I'm not expendable. I have to believe that I'm loved enough and desired enough to warrant a long, hard, diligent search. It's hard to trust that God will not give up on us. To believe that God does God's best work when I'm utterly lost and unable to find myself. Jesus told these parables to religious insiders who won't admit to their own lostness. Their judgmental attitudes about people that they thought were below them. He shares these stories with folks who can't reconcile their brand of piety with Jesus' bewildering claim that lostness has its virtues. Some of you know Barbara Brown Taylor. She argues that lostness makes us stronger at the edges and softer at the center. Lostness teaches us about vulnerability, about empathy, and about humility, about patience. Lostness shows us who we really are and who God really is. I don't picture God as a little boy sitting in a dugout, but why not? Who was enthusiastic and who said, "Coach, I'll be there." And he was there. Even though the circumstances around him were crazy, that no one with any sense would be there. You've heard the story of the Good Shepherd. And now you've heard the story of the Good Sweeper, who searches and searches and searches to find what is lost. Could that be you? We are in the midst of a pretty amazing experience.